very reasonable prices. Weaving was mastered by the ancient Egyptians since the dawn of history. For a picture of the time of the Old Kingdom shows the treasury officials packing the linen in low wooden boxes, which are long enough for the pieces not to be folded. The preparation of clothes and mats was considered as a rule to be women's work. Just like any old tradition in Egypt, this one survived till today. More than 80% of the handmade kilims and carpets are manufactured by girls and women, both in workshops, carpet schools, houses, and art centers, like this urban center for women in Luxor. Girls in this center, which is located in Karnak suburb, learn kilims manufacture, which had barely changed since the old times. A loom is used for making each kilim, and its width set the measurements of that of the kilim. Since the kilim, which is an Arabic word that means rug, is usually narrow and tall, the loom needed is narrow as well. These girls have certainly brought their kilims to great perfection, and consuming little time too. A kilim that would reach 2 meters tall can be finished in just 2 days. They choose simple yet attractive colors that suit all tastes of customers. Their productions are exhibited in the upper showroom in the center. So when you come to Luxor, pay a visit to the urban center for women in Karnak and watch your kilim being made before you take a similar one back home in a small light package made specially for your travel. Not only you'll be encouraging the continuity of this craft, but also you'll be taking home a piece of the Egyptian heritage. Pottery is a handmade industry as ancient as the Egyptian civilization itself, for the Nile bed is composed mainly of silt and mud. That was explored by the Egyptians at a very early stage of their history. They found it useful for making pottery, like jars and pots. Today, the urban center of women in Karnak revives the industry by making all types of productions that suits the buyers, both Egyptians and foreigners. For example, they produce vases, ashtrays, lamps, and other decorative items. The patterns they use reflect the local environment of Luxor, like the houses and the sailing boats, which forms an attraction to tourists who admire these souvenirs. The girls here in the center perform a hard job, especially on the pottery wheel. It's a job performed basically by men, but these girls are dedicated and persistent to learn and produce beautiful artifacts to be sold in the center for the locals and for tourists, and even for bazaars. The raw Egyptian material of pottery facilitates setting good prices for these fabulous objects. It's a lot of work that requires groups of girls working side by side, by hand, for several continuous hours, daily from 9 to 2, except Fridays. Making leather is a very ancient industry in Egypt, ever since man needed to put some kind of cover over his body. By time, this handcraft became advanced, and multiple items became leather made, like sandals, boots, coats, and hunting tools like bows and whips. The Urban Center for Women in Karnak encourages this industry of leather by teaching girls how to design, cut and sew pieces of leather to make fabulous items. Several items are made here, especially bags, wallets and belts. Egypt has a big industry of cattle breed, and thus leather has always been available at reasonable prices, 70% cheaper than the international market. The leather is brought to the center in its final stage. Then the designer gives the drawings to the girls, who cut pieces of leather following these designs. The upper floor of the center has a big showroom, which includes all the handmade productions of the center, so that visitors can watch the craft and the items being made, then buy the product itself from the showroom.
This is the Urban Center for Women in Luxor. It's a center for teaching and making several beautiful handcrafts, Egyptian handcrafts. For example, this is a center for manufacturing anything out of looms. For example, carpets, shawls, and several other items. This hall is specialized for making shawls. The girl behind me is making a shawl by hand using loom. After she's finished with it, it's gonna look like that. The material is actually cotton fibers. You can see how it's beautiful. And it's different from the ones sold in the market made of polyester or machine made. The other colors are also amazing and fabulous as well. For example, that's a different color. It's a shawl. You can wear it either as a scarf or as a shawl around you, around your shoulder, or around your body like that. So this beautiful handcraft is about to be extinct if we do not encourage it by building centers like that. And the interesting thing about this center is that it's totally run by women. So there is a manager, but all the girls working here are all from Luxor. So let's encourage them by visiting the Urban Center for Women in Luxor and buying their products.
Shawls are considered essentials in the wardrobe of women of all ages and all nationalities. That's why they form a popular costume in the shops of the main markets in Egypt. The shawls in the Urban Center of Women in Karnak are made by hand on special looms. The girls learn this craft during their college years. After graduation, they are employed by the center for a full-time job that starts at 9 a.m. and ends at 2 p.m., except Fridays. The designer sets the style and the color of each piece and hands the drawing to her colleague, who follows the instruction. The shawls are made of cotton and fibron, which has got 85% cotton fibers. Relatively small compared to the one used in making carpets. These shawls come very handy to women who wear the veil. They wrap their hair with them in several folds. Tourists also find Egyptian shawls attractive. Quoting from Laura Navoni, who is an Italian resident in Luxor, she spends a fortune on shawls sold in Luxor Bazaar. Egypt is a country that combines between urban societies and nomadic ones. Each has its style of living, talking and dressing. The nomads are divided into several tribes, some of which are in Sinai. The women in Sinai are basically veiled in their own special way. They like to wear a black abaya that's composed of a large black cloth and wrap it around their bodies. But that wouldn't pass without showing their weaving skills all over it. For example, women in Arish city in the northern Sinai like to use red and blue and yellow threads, as they are considered basic traditional Bedouin colors. The girls sew their wedding jalaba at their teenage, and it can take them years to finish up their dresses. After the wedding, some of them sell it at very high prices, yet they are worthy, as they are totally handmade. Here in the urban center for women in Luxor, the women weave abayas similar to the Bedouin ones, with inspirations from Bedouin in other countries like Morocco. Tablecloths, bags, shawls are also sewn according to the traditional Bedouin style. So when you come to visit Luxor, don't forget to pass by the center and watch these authentic handcrafts and buy precious unmatched Egyptian souvenirs.